Looking back at my life's voyage, I can only say that it has been a golden trip. One night, I was really beat. We worked really late and went to get food at some takeout place. And I leaned over against this gumball machine, just exhausted, and there was a SpongeBob looking back at me. And it's just, like, oh, brother. I don't know what else I would be if I wasn't me. I am not looking from the outside, looking back. I am who I am. Looking back at my early career, I had a positive view of technology and its potential. It was a happy time, that's for sure. I always knew looking back on my tears would bring me laughter, but I never knew looking back on my laughter would make me cry. There are still traces of discrimination against race and gender, but it's a lot different than when I started out. It just comes quietly, slowly, sometimes so quietly that you don't realize it until you start looking back. Looking back, the biggest mistake I made was feeling ashamed of it. Acne is a part of life. You don't need to be embarrassed of it. No excuses and no sob stories. Life is full of excuses if you're looking. I have no time to gripe over misfortune. I don't waste time looking back. I have no regrets. I don't believe in looking back. What I am proudest of, working really hard, and achieving as much as I could. Looking back, I have this to regret, that too often when I loved, I did not say so. I've always been interested in arrival, and coming to a space, and even to looking back at where you were. It does hurt that your parents are not together and they are fighting. Looking back, I grew up a little quicker than I would have normally. I spent half the week with my mom and half with my dad. Living the past is a dull and lonely business. Looking back strains the neck muscles, causing you to bump into people not going your way. Looking back, there is nothing wrong with that peace, love and equality that the hippies espoused. In many ways, we have regressed because they were into organic food, back to nature, make love not war, be good to all men, share and share alike, which is what many are talking about now. Although I'm a retired teenager, I remember what it was like to be one. I could have sworn I was riding an emotional roller coaster most of the time. Looking back, I'm actually amazed that I survived. Barely. Literature is always about bygone times. It's always looking back in time with a certain perspective. I look at bygone life which no longer exists, and as I said, I look at it without nostalgia but without anger either. I look at it with criticism and with compassion. I look at it with curiosity. When I have a difficult decision to make, I imagine myself as a 90-year-old guy looking back on his life. I imagine what I'll think about myself at that point in time, and it always makes it really easy to go for it. You're only going to regret that you wimped out. For me, looking back is akin to being on a tightrope and looking down. It doesn't help you in the present moment to deal with what you have to deal with in order to move forward. A photograph can be an instant of life captured for eternity that will never cease looking back at you. Certainly when I got to medical school, I had role models of the kind of physicians I wanted to be. I had an uncle who, looking back, was probably not the most educated physician around, but he carried it off so well. The longer we keep looking back in the rearview mirror, it takes away from everything that's moving forward. Looking back is a way to sharpen the focus on the things you want to change in your life. I think there's something about nostalgia that really puts a fine point on the here and now, and that can be incredibly fascinating and interesting and engaging for the mind. During 65 years, I have walked the path of duty and discipline, and today, looking back at that long path of service, my soldier's heart stirs and murmurs from deep within, thank you, my homeland. The things that have always been important, to be a good man, to try to live my life the way God would have me, to turn it over to Him that His will might be worked in my life, to do my work without looking back, to give it all I've got, and to take pride in my work as an honest performer. For me, growing up felt like a roller coaster ride at times, but looking back, I don't think that it was such a bad thing. It was all part of the excitement of being young. Looking back, I am thankful that I didn't go into the film industry. I have cared for loved ones nearly all my life, so when I look in the mirror, I see a caregiver looking back at me. It began when I was 12 years old and my father became ill. Taking care of him took a toll on our entire family, my mother most of all. In looking back, I see nothing to regret and little to correct. I feel confident imposing change on myself. It's a lot more fun progressing than looking back. That's why I need to throw curve balls. It is not possible to go forward while looking back. What has happened has happened. What is done cannot be undone. There is no point in looking back and ruminating over the past. I am a forward-looking man. I want to look ahead, I want to put my past behind me. I want to make my country proud. What I want is a strong NHS delivering the highest standards of care anywhere in the world, and that is true to the founding values of the NHS, and I hope that, looking back on my time as Health Secretary, people can see that, actually, the foundations for that change were laid in the period that I was Health Secretary. No, I tell you what I like is having the play close after a decent run and looking back on it and saying, yes, I did that, and wasn't it wonderful? Because while you're doing it, it is really tough. It is so hard. I've never looked through a keyhole without finding someone was looking back. Can I remember exactly when I lost my husband? Was it the moment when I had to start tying his shoelaces for him? Or when we stopped being able to laugh with each other? Looking back, that turning point is impossible to pinpoint. But then, that's the nature of dementia. Looking back now, I realized that belonging to the family of a laborer actually helped to prepare my body for boxing. There were many times when my family didn't have enough food or warm clothing to go around. All this made me physically, as well as emotionally, tough. That's the funny thing about time. It is only in looking back that it's easy to connect the dots, to see exactly why everything needed to happen the way that it did. But there's no point in looking back and saying I was unlucky. Looking back, I realize that nurturing curiosity and the instinct to seek solutions are perhaps the most important contributions education can make. I looked at the photos at the VMAs and my hair was the most. That was a time when we were the most extreme, like, I totally looked like Cher. And it always took, like, 2 bottles of hairspray every morning. Yeah, we've definitely changed a lot. But I love that we have that history, and I enjoy looking back. Looking back, we were the luckiest people in the world. There was no choice but to be pioneers, no time to be beginners. Ever since I made tomorrow my favorite day, I've been uncomfortable looking back. Everything happens kind of the way it's supposed to happen, and we just watch it unfold. And you can't control it. Looking back, you can't say, I should've. You didn't, and had you, the outcome would have been different. Looking back, my life seems like one long obstacle race, with me as the chief obstacle. Did you ever spell a word so bad that your spell check has absolutely no clue what you're trying to spell? What do you end up getting? You end up getting, like, a question mark. You got $1 million of technology just looking back at you like, you got me, buddy. Which is pretty amazing because I have all the words. 1 in 200 stars has habitable Earth-like planets surrounding it. In the galaxy, 500 million stars have Earth-like planets going around them. That's huge, 500 million. So when we look at the night sky, it makes sense that someone is looking back at us. My life is like driving down a road. I occasionally glance in the rearview mirror, but I'm not focused on the past or looking back anymore. The only real security is not in owning or possessing, not in demanding or expecting, not in hoping, even. Security in a relationship lies neither in looking back to what it was, nor forward to what it might be, but living in the present and accepting it as it is now. Looking back, I understand that I was teaching myself to write. If you make the mistake of looking back too much, you aren't focused enough on the road in front of you. Visit our website for more quotes, quoting.com.